Welcome to the Happier and Healthier podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marlowe, and this is a place where we don't rely on good luck or good genes for our health and happiness, but rather we create it with our thoughts and our actions each and every single day. Each week, I'll bring you a thought or a guest that will help you live your happiest and healthiest life. Are you ready? Welcome back to the Happier and Healthier podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Anna Cabeca, a triple board certified Emory University trained physician and hormone expert. She is more affectionately known as Dr. Anna and the girlfriend doctor, and you'll see why in this episode. She is extremely easy to talk to. Dr. Anna is the author of The Hormone Fix, and in this episode, we're talking all things hormones from pregnancy through menopause and everything in between. Specifically, she'll be sharing some tips on how we can balance our hormones using diet and lifestyle. Before we get started, check out these brands that make the Happier and Healthier podcast possible. If you're looking for better health and especially better digestion, then you have to check out my favorite probiotic brand, Probiotics. Digestive health is the root of our overall health, and it's so important to get it under control and get it healthy. Not just so you're not embarrassed with gas and bloating or constantly running to the bathroom or maybe never running to the bathroom because you're constipated. It is so important that we nourish our gut and take care of our gut, because when it's not healthy and it's not working properly, it's only a matter of time before we start seeing other health problems, whether that's skin problems, autoimmune problems, and lower immunity because our digestive system is so intricately linked with our immune system, and so much more. So if you're having digestive issues currently, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, of course, definitely check with your doctor, but you probably also want to look into a probiotic. The food we eat has the power to heal us or the power to make us sick. Food has been used as medicine for thousands of years, but with the rise of convenience foods and pharmaceutical drugs, real food has fell out of favor. It's time to take back your health by understanding what you're eating and how it's affecting your health on so many different levels. Order a copy of my book, The Real Food Grocery Guide, so you can learn how to choose the healthiest foods in every aisle of the grocery store. It's 5-star rated on Amazon and has been dubbed the most practical guide to healthy eating by renowned physician and healthcare researcher, Dr. Dean Ornish. I promise you it's an easy and fun read and takes the confusion and the frustration out of grocery shopping and healthy eating. Dr. Anna, thanks so much for being here.
It is great to be here with you, Maria. Thanks for having me.
So we have to start with your story because you have a very interesting story. Can you share your story and how you came to be this hormone expert?
Well, it is a long story, but in short, really, I just have loved the study of women's health my whole life. As a young girl, my mom was diabetic and with heart disease. And when I was only 16, she was requiring cardiac bypass surgery. And so it was realization to me, even at that time, to recognize that most of the work that most of the procedures, the medications, the care that was applied towards women was based on research done on men. And that just didn't sit right with me. So I became a really strong women's health advocate. And then I naturally went into gynecology and obstetrics. And then when I was 39, I had a personal health crisis after significant trauma in my family. I was diagnosed with infertility and early menopause, and I was told I would never be able to have another child again. And I failed the highest doses of infertility treatments. And it looked bleak. In medicine, we give a diagnosis and it doesn't say, okay, well, this is your diagnosis today. But if you do A, B, and C, you'll be able to reverse the diagnosis, right? We don't talk about that. And so part of my journey was actually a journey around the world looking for answers, because my Emory University doctor's bag was empty. I'd failed known conventional therapies. And, we were devastated as a family. So we went around the world actually and homeschooled for a year and traveled to different places. I met healers from Native America, from South America, an ancient Andean philosopher, a Brazilian, or it was an orthomolecular scientist, and in Israel, in all over Europe and New Zealand, Australia, France, and Germany. I met with some of the world's leading scientists, as well as some of the amazing native healers, including an Indonesian traditional medicine man. And I said, I don't discriminate against what works, right? When it comes to healing, and with discernment and implementing these practices, healing not just my body, but my mind and my spirit, I was able to reverse early menopause, and then at age 41, get pregnant naturally and have a beautiful, healthy baby girl named Ava Marie. And so that was part of the initiation into really getting to root cause medicine even more than I'd already been a food as medicine kind of person, but even more to understand how the body does have such ability to repair itself, such strong regenerative ability. And then at age 48, I was hitting a second menopause that caused me the brain fog, the memory loss, the mood swings, and weight gain, rapid weight gain, despite not doing anything different. And that's where I really had to dig in to understand, okay, beyond hormones, right? It takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. So really getting beyond our reproductive hormones to create lifestyle change that restores the body and improves our aging process. And so that's been part of my entire journey. And that's where I've now been working with hundreds of thousands of clients across the globe, just inspiring them to take back the power over their own health so that they can not be normal during any time of our life, but really be optimal.
I love that. Your story is so inspiring. And there's so many questions I want to ask you based off of that. Well, first, you mentioned you got pregnant at 41. And I just saw an article in USA Today that women over 35, you have to be very careful. It's very risky, right? This is something that we hear all the time. You can't really have a baby, or you shouldn't have a baby over 35 because of complications and birth defects, having multiple babies, etc. So can you tell us what's the real deal on that? You talked about normal versus optimal.
It is terrible that they wrote an article like that, honestly. That is so disappointing. I will tell you, because that, again, that's just sensationalism. Over age 35, certainly we are considered, there's a medical diagnosis code for those of us who get pregnant over age 35. And it most definitely was created by not a woman. The diagnosis code, it is advanced maternal age. And so there's another diagnosis code for a woman over age 35 who gets pregnant, who has more than one child, and that is elderly multigravida. Elderly multigravida. Oh, yep, age 35, you have one kid, you're elderly multigravida. Isn't that terrible?
It's awful.
Multigravida means more than one child. And so that is the terminology, because we know hormonal decline, ovarian function declines with age. But I mean, from birth, as far as we know from science, from birth, we're born with a certain number of eggs. And once our puberty hits, our reproductive cycle kicks in with a surge of hormones. Our ovaries are cycling each month with varying levels of estrogen and progesterone. It creates what we call the follicular phase, the first 2 weeks from day one being the day our period starts, the bleeding starts. And the last 2 weeks we call the luteal phase after ovulation. So when we have higher levels of progesterone during the secondary phase. So we have these natural cycles, and over time, our ovaries become more resistant and less productive. So that is true. That is a normal part of aging. But there is so much that we can do to repair and essentially resuscitate our ovaries, as I've shown in my own life and now countless of other women's. And it really comes to creating an internal environment that's conducive, to health, to healthy pregnancies, to a state of health that is supportive. And I have one client who became pregnant in her 50s. And so, now many of us over 50, including myself, would cringe at that idea, but so be it.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I'm so glad to have you on and sharing that message, because I do feel as women, we're given so many of these messages like, don't have kids over 35, or, you're over the hill at 35. Like, this is terrible what the media, sensationalizes. So I'm glad, you're living proof that that's not the case, and that we do have, our bodies are very resilient, and we do have a lot of power to create that internal terrain that's going to allow us to, our bodies to be healthy into whatever age that we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit more about hormones. I feel like most people have a general idea of what they do and how they function, but maybe not complete picture. So let's just talk about hormones. What are they? How do they influence our health? And then how do they change as we age?
Yeah, thank you. Hormones are chemical messengers that communicate in many aspects of our body. We have over 150 hormones that circulate and coordinate our body's functions, from reproduction to our thoughts, to our memories, to our desires, our passion, and also the way we think and feel. So these are a beautiful array of hormones. We typically think of the reproductive hormones as estrogen and progesterone, as well as DHEA, which is an adrenal hormone, and testosterone. Testosterone is produced in women by the ovaries and the adrenals, and in men by the testes and the adrenals. So as we age, we tend to peak these hormone levels at different levels, but in our mid 20s, we have the peak levels of DHEA, and then it starts to decline thereafter. So our progesterone levels, as a woman ages, our progesterone levels start to decline most rapidly, again, because this is related predominantly to ovarian function. And we start to see a decline in our mid to late 30s. And estrogen falls and testosterone falls as well. But what this feels like, and this is something I just want to preface this hormone discussion with, that without a doubt, and I write about this in my book, The Hormone Fix, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. It absolutely takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. But what I saw as a gynecologist and in my own life, clients come in their mid 30s and they have worsening PMS symptoms, irregular bleeding, maybe breakthrough bleeding or heavy, more painful periods, more breast tenderness, as well as more anxiety or moodiness. And this is typically where I would always tell my clients, well, if you only hate your husband 2 weeks out of the month, it's probably your hormones and not completely your husband. So it is funny. Physiology affects behavior. Physiology absolutely drives behavior. And so that's an important association. So in order to feel better, we have to heal our physiology. And it comes from both ways, mind over matter, certainly, but we have to do the right processes, the right lifestyle choices, the way we nourish our body, our mind, our spirit. It has to work for us and not against us. It can go either way, especially in times of crisis when our body is producing more of the fight or flight hormones, such as cortisol and adrenaline. And that depletes our reproductive hormones. So what we expect to see during this time period is more PMS, more irritability, more anxiety, more menstrual irregularity, and add into other neurologic symptoms, brain fog, memory loss, difficulty sleeping. And, ultimately, maybe we'll likely, as what they've seen in China, is increased divorce. But we don't want to do that, because that's what we're here doing, Maria. We are empowering people to really create health and vibrancy during this time, and to experience the peace that surpasses all understanding, as it says in the Bible. So, when working with women, after a client comes in during this initial phase, 35, 40s, they're often offered antidepressants or SSRI medications and or birth control pills. But what happens, those are just Band-Aids. And so often the patient comes back and they're experiencing more menstrual irregularity, and that could lead to a hysterectomy or endometrial ablation. And then typically the patient comes back in, continues to complain even of vaginal dryness, decreased desire, lower energy, and that often can lead to, like, where do you send the client next? Well, here's a referral to a psychiatrist and a divorce attorney. And it's a problem. But what I learned through my own experience, my journey around the world, and integrating traditional medicine with the best of our modern medicine, Western medicine, is that when we intervene at any stage, and you're never too young, never too old, but when we intervene with healthy lifestyle strategies and nourishment, just like you talk about all the time, you've got this, right? Mm-hmm. That our body becomes resilient and is able to repair itself. So in my clinical practice, Maria, when patients came in with these complaints, I would put them through essentially my Keto Green detox and do lab work and bring them back to review the labs. By then, when they come back in, they're already feeling 90% better. And then maybe I need to tweak a hormone here or tweak a hormone there. But typically 90% better by supporting liver function, detoxification, supporting gut health, and creating nourishing practices in our lives.
So let's dive into that a little bit more deeply. You did come up with this Keto Green diet and lifestyle, which, as you mentioned, is really helpful for restoring that hormonal health and just overall health. So can you share what are some of the key components of that?
So with Keto Green, which is really interesting, the big part about Keto Green is that it honors our physiology as we age, right? I mentioned the declining reproductive hormones. These are neuroprotective hormones that protect our brain and protect our immune system. So as we're aging, what we see with this dip in these hormones, we see all these neuroendocrine symptoms. So even though I hadn't been doing anything different, I'd been able to restore my fertility, when I hit age 48, I started experiencing the symptoms my patients came in telling me they would experience. And maybe I didn't believe them. Specifically, they say, Dr. Anna, I'm gaining 5, 10, 20 pounds and I'm not doing anything different. And I'd think, really, how is that possible? Surely you're doing something different. And it happened to me. I would say God makes me humble. So I gained essentially 20 pounds and I hadn't been doing anything different. So it really made me dig deep and to figure out why on a cellular level, at this most basic physiological level, what was happening, what was changing. And for me, certainly the weight gain was problematic, but I had brain fog. I was irritable. And at that point, I had 2 teenagers and my youngest in elementary school in first grade. And, you cannot afford brain fog around kids, especially teenage girls, right? They will manipulate you. And so I was experiencing that. And that's where I said, okay, no more carbs. I'm going keto and cut out all my carbs. Very similar to how I would put my patients who had candida problems or chronic yeast infections, as well as my clients with seizure problems or other mental health problems. And I completely restricted carbs, but quickly I found out that I was irritable, agitated. And again, you cannot afford to be that way with teenagers in the house. And I had to understand why. And so I did what I always told my patients to do, check urine pH. And I started checking my urine pH. Well, lo and behold, I was acidic as my urine, as the test strips would read. So I have no idea. So that can lead acidity, a urine pH acidity can be associated with chronic inflammation. And we know, according to research, the more alkaline your urine pH is, the less risk for diabetes, metabolic disorders, hypertension, cancer, and osteoporosis, right? All things that women deal with when we get older. Everyone deals with when we get older, but we can prevent it. And a simple vital sign that everyone can check at home, pH paper is available anywhere, is checking urine pH. And I consider that another vital sign, like checking your pulse, checking your blood pressure, checking your heart rate variability. I think that's another vital sign. And checking your urine pH, because that indicates not just how we're nourishing our bodies, but how stress is affecting us. The more stressed we are, the more cortisol, which causes more of an acidic urine pH. And that blew my mind.
Yeah, that's great. I have had so many doctors on here and no one has ever mentioned that. But yeah, that's a great indicator and what a great inexpensive way or tool that we can have at home to constantly be monitoring our health. So, what are some of the things? So, you mentioned stress can throw off our pH and make things more acidic. What are a few other things that can also have that same effect?
Well, definitely a keto diet. Animal meats are very acidic. And so if you think of acidity like a city, think of New York City. It's industrial, there's exhaust fumes, pollution. That creates acidity within our body. Alkalinity, think of more lush green space, garden, the Amazon jungle, waterfall in the background, just relaxing, chill. That creates more of an alkaline effect on our body. Nature, more alkaline, industry, more acidic. So our diet, many of the keto foods that we typically use. So there's a way to go keto clean, or you can be keto dirty, which is typically what people think about with the bacon, butter, and Velveeta or processed cheeses. And I was clean keto, but it was still acidic for me. And I needed to start adding in the alkalinizers. So, Maria, what I recognized is as I added in these alkalinizers, low carbohydrate greens like kale, spinach, collards, beet greens, Swiss chard, all these dark leafy greens that are so good, as well as the ones that are even better for for estrogen detoxification, like our cruciferous vegetables such as cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus. These are just tremendously beneficial for our body. So what I recognized is that eating the alkaline foods really helped to help my physiology, help with regularity and bowel movements so there wasn't constipation, help me sleep better. But what I noticed by checking my urine pH is that the mornings I would walk on the beach and or do my gratitude journaling, I was more alkaline all day, And that's where I understood the stress connection or how big that is. Other things are foods that can cause acidity. And this is why it's so important to check your urine pH for discovery. Are food sensitivities. For example, if I'm alkaline, but yet I eat some dairy, somehow dairy gets into my food, I will be immediately acidic at the next testing, which is so interesting. I have a terrible dairy sensitivity. And then toxins, mold, high blood sugars, all of that can create more of an acidic urine. So we need to balance it with the minerals in our diets and supplements.
And what about gut health? What role does that play in our ability to manage stress and inflammation?
So, in my Keto Green approach and how I've incorporated the different food groups and Keto Green 16, which comes out May 5th, there's 16 key food types. And the reason for many of these food types is to improve the gut microbiome, health, and diversity. Diversity within a gut microbiome has been shown to be associated with less diseases of inflammation as well as chronic degenerative diseases. The healthier our gut bacteria, our gut microbiome, and more diverse is associated with health. So that is built into the plan with the food choices. And the other part with the microbiome is that we recognize now that there's an estrobolome, specific bacteria that detoxify estrogen in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. So creating the right, essentially, foods for our gut is critical in having a healthy life and healthy outcome.
Do you think there's any benefit in doing these, like, for example, DNA stool testing, which will show you the bacteria, all the different strains and everything that you have in your microbiome? Or do you feel like simply making the dietary changes is, a good first step?
Well, it certainly is a good first step, but it's always nice. I always say test, don't guess. So I'm big on testing, urine pH testing, certain key markers, lab testing. I talk about this in both my books. But stool testing, fabulous. I use the GI map regularly with working with clients to look at, what is the health of their digestive tract. It can tell us so much. It really can, especially even when you think the gut is responsible for producing over 80 to 90% of our serotonin. And that is our anti-anxiety hormone. right? Neurotransmitter. So we have to look at the gut. And as functional medicine providers, we say gut first, right? Heal the gut first.
Definitely. Yeah, the gut is really the root of our health. And if we nourish our gut, then our whole immune system, our whole body is a lot healthier. So what would you say are your top three foods, or maybe not even just foods, but habits for a healthy gut?
Top three habits. So go Keto Green, number one. And it's not just how we eat or what we eat, it's when we eat, with who we eat, the mental status that we eat. I mean, there's a lot to it, but going keto through decreasing carbs, increasing healthy fats, and a variety of good quality protein sources, but really important here for the health of our microbiome and our health of our gut is intermittent fasting and no more snacking. When we get into ketosis, we increase our insulin sensitivity, which really does empower our hormones and our bodily processes because we're naturally becoming more insulin resistant as we get older, which leads to inflammation in so many cases.
Yeah, those are great tips. We actually talk about intermittent fasting a lot on here and not snacking. It drives me crazy when people are like, eat 5 or 7 or 8 meals a day. It's like, no,
No.
no, please don't. No, that's great. So just to kind of clarify, with keto diet, because I do feel like people typically when they hear keto diet, they think, okay, all carbs, including vegetables, are out the window. But it sounds like, just to clarify for everyone listening, still the dark leafy greens, your cruciferous vegetables, you're still having vegetables, the carbohydrates, it's the refined carbohydrates, the grains, those sorts of things that you're restricting primarily.
Yes, absolutely. No grains, no sugars. The carbohydrates we get are from our vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, and certainly some nut sources, but predominantly through our vegetables, and keeping that as low as possible, under 40 grams a day. And definitely like the intermittent fasting and Keto Green 16, I work people into a 16-hour intermittent fast, and it just works fast, quickly, especially as people struggle with hormonal symptoms, the anxiety, the brain fog, and even the physiologic symptoms like the hot flashes. Not many people just think hot flashes are related to estrogen, and it's one of the number one complaints that women going through menopause experience that creates quality of life issues. And I mean, I had to dig into the research to figure out that insulin resistance is a big factor for hot flashes, because as clients did my program, they're like, within a week, my hot flashes went away. I was having one an hour. And by 2 weeks, there's over 90% improvement in all symptom scores. And this is related to that insulin sensitivity. So it's really the major hormones that we deal with as we go through life are really insulin and cortisol, as far as really driving our metabolism, and oxytocin. So in my book, The Hormone Fix, my first book published by Ballantine Penguin Random House, I really talk in detail about how to empower oxytocin, the hormone of love, bonding, and connection, the most alkalinizing hormone in our body, by the way, and really essential for quality of life. It also helps to regulate cortisol.
Oh, I love that. So you mentioned that a lot of your clients noticed that their hot flashes and other menopause symptoms decreased when they started eating the more of a keto green way. So what are some of the other misconceptions or the main misconceptions you see about menopause? Because I feel like, again, this is something where we're kind of taught, it's something to be feared. Your life is going downhill after you go through menopause. Like, what are some of the misconceptions you see? Yeah. And how do we move through perimenopause and menopause? How do we move through that? Feeling good, having a clear mind and everything.
Yeah. So the misconceptions are that, you just have to power through it, that this is, menopause is a disease. It is not a disease, just like puberty is not a disease, right? Puberty is a natural process. Menopause and andropause is a natural process, but we can do it well or unwell. And the key thing that I want clients to know is that each one of us has power to go through this really, really well. And case in point is, I've had clients come in to see me who were told by multiple other doctors that they needed a hysterectomy, or they needed their ovaries removed, or the list goes on. And honestly, in my own clinical practice, being a surgeon and a gynecologist and operating 2 to 3 times a week, when I gave my patients these same tools that I used myself, I went from doing 2 to 3 surgeries a week to needing to do 2 to 3 major surgeries per year.
Wow.
That's how tremendous our body heals. I always tell clients, like, because Maria, many hysterectomies are still rampant, right? Actually, let me give you a case example. One of my patients, 37-year-old Lauren, came in to see me. She'd been told by 3 other physicians that due to her endometriosis, she would never get pregnant. She'd been infertile for 7 years, and she just needed a hysterectomy. She had chronic dysmenorrhea, painful periods, and nothing they could do helped her. But her husband was 8 years younger, and they wanted to have a baby. Neither of them had a child. And so I ultrasounded her. I did all my own ultrasounds in practice. And I did an ultrasound. I looked at her lab reports and I said, well, why don't we try for 3 months and let's see, what we can do together. I don't see any urgent need for a hysterectomy at this point. And so I put her on my program. And so completely detox, supporting her detoxification. I put her on Mighty Maca Plus, which is one of my products I created. I put her on detox support capsules. I put her on bioidentical progesterone on the second half of her cycle from day 14 to 28. And by her second period, she said, Dr. Anna, I'm not having any more menstrual pain or PMS symptoms. I feel so much better. And again, the dietary approach, right? Basically, I told her, Keto Green, but what that means is no sugars, no white, no wheat, no sweet, and very little red meat, right? Like there's no white, no wheat, and no sweet, very little red meat. And the reason for the very little red meat, even though I'm keto, is because there are a lot of hormones in red meat, and I want her body to produce her own, right? And meat is also very acidic, so I wanted to really alkalinize and support her detox, and also by doing that, supporting her gut. And that led into, within 3 months, lo and behold, Lauren became pregnant, and that child is now in elementary school. So, really, really good story. And to this day, she still has her uterus.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is really amazing. That's why it's always important to get a second opinion or third opinion, whatever you need.
Or fourth opinion in this case. Yeah.
Don't stop until
Don't stop until truth resonates with you. Like for her, she's like, it just doesn't feel right. So don't stop. Listen to our intuition. And that's where I want women to be able to discern. Sometimes for us, it's absolutely necessary and the best decision we can make in our life to get a hysterectomy, right? But let me tell you, if we do the hysterectomy without addressing the underlying reasons why we needed the hysterectomy to begin with, then other problems will develop down the road.
Right. 100%. So can you share what a normal day looks like in terms of eating the Keto Green way? What your meals would look like?
So typically have clients intermittent fast anywhere between 13 to 16 hours. And really important with the minimum of 13-hour intermittent fasting for women is because research has shown in a scientific study published in 2016 by the Journal of the American Medical Association revealed that in looking at women who had breast cancer, if they had fasted at least 13 hours between dinner and breakfast, they had a significantly reduced risk of recurrent breast cancer.
Wow.
And the study also showed that they had significantly lower levels of hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of blood sugar over time in our body. And we've seen this in my studies as well. Improvement in hemoglobin A1C with just doing Keto Green the way that I recommend it. So in just as little as 1 month to 2 months, we've seen incredible improvement. So that's critical. So what a day in the life of Keto Green looks like, I'll tell you, I'm actually drinking my Keto Green shake right now. It's 11:30 here. Typically, I eat dinner by 6 to 7 p.m. in the evening. And also, there's science behind my reasoning for that, is that when we eat later in the day, any meal we eat after essentially 7 p.m. is associated with an increased secretion of insulin compared to that same meal we would have eaten before 7 p.m., which is really fascinating. So in my family, we try to eat the earlier the better. And when we can on Sundays, it's a big lunch and maybe a soup or something or salad for dinner. So intermittent fasting, 16 hours. I'm breaking fast with a Keto Green shake, which for me is my Keto Green protein powder. It has 0 grams of sugar. I'm really watching carbs, especially early on in the day. I allow more carbs in the evening because that can help with serotonin and help us get a better night's sleep. So for my Keto Green shake today is a scoop of my Keto Green powder, meal replacement powder, a scoop of collagen peptides, because really want to bump up my protein and my collagen right now to support my immune system, and 2 scoops of Mighty Maca Plus, an adaptogenic formula. So I just did this in a shaker cup because I was running to our podcast, but I can also blend in, like typically I'd love to make a very substantial smoothie with adding a handful of greens and like a quarter cup of sprouts, maybe a slice of ginger to improve digestion, and some flax seeds or nuts or seeds to add just additional to my smoothie. You can add celery, cucumber. You want to add more of the greens that you love too, to add in as much fiber as you can, which is going to keep us from being hungry. The other thing to add into your Keto Green smoothie is the healthy fats, like a quarter of an avocado or a teaspoon to a tablespoon of MCT oil. And so that we get those fats so that we're not hungry further on in the day. And then I'll eat my second meal, my dinner. That will be my dinner, will be a Keto Green. I'll tell you what we ate last night. We had white fish that I baked in lemon juice, and it was seasoned with garlic and some like a peppery seasoning mix, garlic, peppery seasoning, and lemon juice. It was really, really so good. And I baked that in the oven for 20 minutes. And on the side, we had sauteed kale with onions and ghee, sauteed it in ghee, and then topped it off with some lemon juice and seasoning, typically Himalayan sea salt, and actually have one of my recipes in it's called my Breeze Through Menopause program, is my do-it-yourself bagel seasoning. Just so good.
Mm-hmm.
But you could use it on all food. So it has some sesame seeds in there. Adding seeds are so powerful, and herbs of any kind. And so what else did we have? Then we had papaya ice cream. So fresh papaya blended with ice and some coconut milk, frozen, and then served with cinnamon. And my youngest daughter, she puts honey on it. No honey for me though, honey. So
Oh, that sounds really good. Actually, that sounds kind of similar to what we ate the other night, or last night, I should say. Some white fish with some sauteed greens. That's one of my favorite meals. So that really sounds very delicious and very, very doable. So I wanted to also ask you, I know you also talk about sexual health and the importance of sexual health. So can you talk a little bit more about that and why that's a relevant topic to all women?
it is so important. Honestly, I'm having conversations with younger and younger women because, I've just been talking about this, and it is relevant to all ages. And the importance is that our sexual health, our feminine health, is important for our entire life. Where the medical community has served us wrong are in guidelines like, oh, you don't need a pelvic exam after this age, or you don't need a pap smear, or vaginal dryness is normal. It's normal not to have sex. Incontinence, you can expect it, but here's this place to get incontinent pads or, from. And honestly, pelvic health, and this is why I tell clients, clitoris to anus is the most valuable real estate of our body. I am telling you, because if we don't have good pelvic health, what happens? We get incontinence, we get prolapse, we can get hemorrhoids, and even more rectal issues. And it just affects our quality of life. But incontinence is the number one reason why caregivers put their loved one into a nursing home. And so, I always joke, honestly, Maria, I say, I have 4 daughters, I had to get them through their teenage years. I do not need to give them one more excuse to tuck me away somewhere. No, they want to do that now. So I think it's really important to understand, but sexual health too, intimacy. So I had a client named Nancy. She's 56 years old. She was divorced for over 20 years, raised her children, started dating again. and met someone she just fell head over heels with. And so she called me up one day and said, Dr. Anna, I'm having recurrent ear infection. I am on my 3rd round of antibiotics, and my doctor wants to put me on a daily dose of an antibiotic so I don't get these infections. And I said, well, first of all, Nina, I call that honeymoonitis. That can be honeymoonitis. But as we get older, the tissue of our urethra, where we urinate from, just like the vagina, gets a little bit thinner and more susceptible to infections and to bacteria entering into the urethra. So this is what we have to do. We have to keep that tissue healthy. And so, number one, I prescribed her a probiotic. Well, first I prescribed her a probiotic daily. So we got to get your good bacteria to counteract the bad bacteria, and vitamin C on a daily basis to improve the pH of your urine and also make it less likely to have a bacterial infection. So 2,000 to 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. I use a vitamin C a day. So the probiotic, the vitamin C, and then topically restoring, like as we would use an anti-aging cream for our face. And I've recommended her my Julva cream, which I created because I needed something for me. And, for kids, early menopause, I get what this feels like. So the Julva has DHEA in it. It has plant stem cells from the alpine rose and some really other amazing nourishing ingredients. So lo and behold, she hasn't had a single urinary tract infection. Oh, yes. And then after intercourse to pee, just to flush your bladder.
Mm-hmm.
At your earliest convenience. And so in all this time now, over several months, she hasn't had another urinary infection. And also her relationship improved. They got engaged over Christmas and just moved in together with plans to get married in the very near future.
Wow, that's amazing.
At 56, that could have been a very different scenario, because if you have pain or discomfort every time you do something, why would you want to?
Right.
Why would you want to? And intimacy is important, whether we're having intercourse or not. Connection, intimacy, pleasure, being able to please and pleasure each other is transforming. And this is true at any age. I've had clients in their 70s and clients in their 20s having issues with sexual health and intimacy. And so it's really important to know our body and to naturally empower it.
I love that. This has been so helpful. I really appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom today. This is a very beneficial podcast. One last question I'd like to ask that I ask everyone. If you can leave our listeners with just one tip for living a happier and healthier life, what would that be?
Love well and have fun together. Nothing is better than healthy communities. So when you're sitting at your dinner table, laughing, telling jokes, focusing on the positive, that makes all the difference in the world. That keeps us together and empowers our most powerful hormone, oxytocin.
I love that. I really, really love that. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Anna. For more from Dr. Anna, be sure to check out her website, dranna.com. You can check out her best-selling book, The Hormone Fix, wherever books are sold. And you can also find her podcast, The Girlfriend Doctor Podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts.